And we are back once again with another video. Make sure you hit that subscribe button down below as we discuss some Louisville football. Also, make sure that you like this video if you enjoy it. Comment all your thoughts and opinions down below as we talk about Jeff Brohm in this new era of Louisville football. As Jeff Brohm, the former quarterback at Louisville from that 89 and 93 period, he brings back an interesting little setup there for the Cardinals. As to be honest, I do think that you upgraded in head coach by Scott Satterfield leaving to go to Cincinnati. I think it, in my personal opinion, I'm not involved in the situation. I'm not the athletic director. I'm not anybody involved. I do personally think that it was more he was going to either be fired or he could leave. And, well, he got the Cincinnati job. So all is well in the world. So let's also, one other thing, make sure you check out the Patreon page and the channel website. Both links are in the description. If you want to financially support the channel, click on the Patreon page. Link is in the description. So let's make our way over to the Louisville schedule. So with this schedule, it is very bottom heavy. So the beginning of the schedule is a lot easier than the second half of the schedule. You start off with the first year or with the first game against Georgia Tech. If anybody does not know and is a Louisville fan, the California transfer quarterback, Jack Plummer, is your new QB. He had 3,095 yards last year with a 62.5% completion percentage, so 21 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. A pretty solid overall quarterback that definitely has some advantages to him. I think that with this particular setup, with Jack Plummer, you do lose some of your biggest weapons in Tyler Hudson, and you also lose Malik Cunningham, obviously, but you do bring back Jawar Jordan. I know I'm saying that wrong. If anybody wants to correct me on how specifically to say it, you're more than welcome to. But I think with this game, it's a Friday night game, which makes it fun because it means Friday night football. Unfortunately, I will probably be at a high school football game for this game. But overall, with Georgia Tech is in an interesting spot. They also have a first-year head coach, though. It's Brent Key, who was the interim from last year. So it does make for an interesting little matchup there. Week one, it creates a good dynamic, I think, for Jeff Brohm. I think because he's bringing in the transfer of Jack Plummer, who is, I think, a super senior at this point. I think he's a 6-year senior. So I'm going to give the win to the Cardinals. I think that Louisville is able to get the win. I think that with both teams having newish head coaches, obviously Jeff Brohm has some experience with the program, being its former quarterback, but that was almost 3 decades ago now, over 3 decades. So I do think that both, and with Brent Key, I think that it does help that he was an interim head coach, but overall, I do think it is going to be a win for Louisville. Then you have Murray State, easy dub here. You're not going to have any issues. Murray State, not really a major football powerhouse. Though I do find it interesting that these games are both not on Saturday. So that is kind of interesting for the viewer. Then you have a home game, or I take that back, a neutral site game against Indiana. This is a game in Indianapolis. This should be a win, in my opinion. I think Tom Allen, I like him as a coach. I think that he has some defensive capabilities that make it hard for the offenses to play against him. But I think offensively, the team is just in a complete struggling phase. And really, as a team overall, Tom Allen is probably on the hot seat and probably going to be gone after this year. Speaking of coaches that are going to be gone after this year, you bring in Boston College for your second ACC matchup. I think you get another win. I think NC State, or not NC State. I think Louisville starts off 2-0 in conference play. I think that Boston College, you're looking at a very bad team. Phil Jakovic left as QB at BC. The QBs behind him were not good last year. And I think that Jeff Hafley is probably going to be on the hot seat. And like Tom Allen, I do think he'll probably be fired come the end of the season unless if something major happens. Then you have a road game against NC State. I think that this is going to be another win. I think that you start off the year 5-0. I think NC State, they're in a good spot as a program. I think that overall, NC State, you do lose Devin Leary. You bring back a lot of defensive pieces. The defense should be elite. And even with this game being in Raleigh, I think offensively, firepower-wise, I do think that you are able to get a win. Though I will say this, I will preface this. I think between the Pitt and NC State games, I think you win one of them. I think you win one of the road games. I will kind of play spoiler here. I do think that you lose the Pitt game. I think that it's going to kind of be a split. I could see you losing to NC State and beating Pitt, but I don't want to play too much spoiler there. Then you have Notre Dame. I think that this is a loss. I think that the Fighting Irish and Sam Hartman are just a little bit too powerful for the Cardinals. Obviously, the Louisville Notre Dame matchups have been kind of interesting the past couple of years. In 2020, Louisville and Notre Dame had that tremendously terrible game. And when I mean terrible, I mean it finished out 12-7. It was just not a fun game to watch whatsoever. And then the previous matchup the year before, Notre Dame won that one 35-17. I don't see much changing here. I do think that Louisville kind of keeps it semi-close. I think they don't get completely blown out by like 20-plus points, but I do think it is probably a 2-touchdown game. Like I said earlier, I do think that you lose this game. I think you split the series between Pitt and NC State, not because I think Pitt and NC State and Louisville are all basically kind of at that same point in the conference, which isn't a bad spot to be in with a first-year head coach compared to Dave Doran and Pat Narduzzi being long-term head coaches at these universities for a very long time. Pitt obviously having some success of recent, and NC State having some sustained success under Dave Doran. Then you have a bye week before you head into the matchup against the Duke Blue Devils. And this is a game that I went back and forth on. Riley Leonard and Duke obviously have a lot of components to them that bring a good environment. And I think that it definitely, with this team, particularly between Riley Leonard, an improved offensive line, and a defense that brought in a couple of transfers in the secondary from Texas A&M and Miami, you're really looking at a team that is going to be very difficult to beat. In my opinion, finish in that top 3 of the ACC and compete with Clemson and Florida State for that bid to the ACC championship. So I do think that this is a loss. I think Riley Leonard and Duke and Mike Elko are just a little bit more experienced and in a better spot as a program. But I know it's tough, but you're 5-3 heading into your matchups against the Virginia schools. I think you beat Virginia Tech. I think that what's his name? What's the Virginia Tech's coach name? I'm trying to remember. But Brent Pry, that's who it is. But Brent Pry, I don't particularly like what he is doing. I think that he has a lot of things that he needs to work on with that program. Both the Virginia schools are in absolute disaster mode, in my opinion. Between Brent Pry and Tony Elliott, I think that both of the hires were misses. I think that Clemson's offense under Tony Elliott was not that great, and I do think that Penn State's defense, I don't think that meant that it was good. It was better than sometimes, but I don't know if that really made him head coach material. He's had some struggles as a recruiter, not bringing in a lot of high recruits. He lost one of their best recruits later on in the recruiting cycle to Clemson. I'm not a big fan at where he's at right now with this program. I do think that there are going to be a lot of struggles going into it. So Then you have Virginia. Like I said, I think that both of these schools are in kind of disaster mode. I'm not too particularly happy that you do have a Thursday night game. It is at home, so that is a good thing. That is, with it being a home Thursday night game, that is much better than being a road Thursday night game, because that would make it incredibly hard to get any practicing in or game planning. But I think with the passing attack that Louisville brings to the table is just simply too much when it comes to this overall team. Then you have a road game against Miami. I'm sorry, but I can't give you the win in that matchup. Miami just simply has, I think, talented enough pieces in order to win that game. And I think with if it was a home game, I'm picking Louisville. But with it being a road game in Hard Rock, I think that is going to be a win. If it was early on in the season, I'd probably be a little bit more 50-50 on the game. But I do think with it being later on in the season, Louisville does take the L in that matchup. Then finally, you play your rival in the Kentucky Wildcats, and this is a game that I completely think is 50-50. Like, I think it is just completely 50-50. But I'm going to go with the Wildcats on this one, and hear me out. Here's the reason why. I do think Louisville finishes with a 7-5 record in the first year under Jeff Brom. But here's my thinking is this. I think when it comes to Kentucky and Louisville, you're looking at two programs that bring a lot to the table offensively. Devin Leary is the new quarterback at Kentucky, but really what I think it comes down to is Mark Stoops' experience as a head coach. With it being a road game, being a rivalry game, anything's possible. But that's what I'm going to kind of come down to is Mark Stoops' experience, even though I do think it is a very 50-50 game. And really, to be honest, it kind of depends on what's going on in the season generally to what kind of happens in this game. It could be that Kentucky's having a really good season or a bad season, and same goes for Louisville. So that's going to wrap up today's video. Hit 2 videos down below. Will be a playlist of all of my videos, so hit that video down below and hit the subscribe button up here as we are marching away towards 1,100 subscribers by the end of July. And as always, have a great day. Bye, guys.